This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. A lot of us trying to discover the secret of life. I'm just going to use that probably overused term, but many may feel this is not where I should be. This is not what I should be doing. Maybe there's more out there. What's my purpose? Why do I wake up every day? What's going on there? Yeah, life may be okay, but you got that pull inside of you that there's more, but you haven't figured out what the more is. Many of us gravitate toward talking with people, working with people like a life coach. Now imagine if you connected with a certified life coach, but a coach who's also a psychologist. So gets what you're thinking and why you're thinking it, but then gives you the tools to move your life forward. I found that person for you. Lots of experience in helping people, many decades along the way, and we're gonna dig into your future today with Dr. Phil Bennett, who joins us on the program today. Welcome. How are you doing?
Doing well today. Thanks, Steve.
So much to talk about. Life coach, psychologist. We'll say retired psychologist.
Right.
Maybe not actively practicing, but I have to believe that the psychologist part of your mind is always on call when you're working with somebody as a life coach, right?
None of us leave the past behind, right?
Sure.
So, and in fact, one of the things that's fascinating about neuroscience is we want to believe we're actually living in the present moment, but because of the way our brains are wired, the parts of our brain that register danger, those kinds of things, they're so much faster than the thinking part of our brain that that part of our brain can make 10 decisions before we can have one conscious thought.
Yep.
So,
it's so true. I've even
always
heard
the past before the present.
and it's often been said, and it honestly was the game changer in my life as things were changing in different direction, that I met somebody. It's almost like they just were dropped from the sky to give me the message. Why don't you live in the moment? You don't live in the moment. What's going on? You're living in the past and the future. And it took me a while to figure that out. And then when I did, all right, that was a realization. But I've often heard too that if you're hypothetically walking down the street and you see somebody, just look up. You see somebody and they're different. Maybe they're from a different culture. They're dressed differently. Microseconds, to your point, we make a decision, safe or not. And a lot of times you see somebody that doesn't, align with who you are. They could be the most wonderful person in the world, but you don't know them yet. Right away, danger, danger, fear, danger. Right. I had no idea what you just said was to the degree that it is that 10 decisions are made before you can even get to a logical one.
Yeah. And it's all unconscious, which is why a lot of times when people feel stuck, they just aren't recognizing everything that's being driven at an unconscious level, which is part of the power of mindfulness, that it enables our brain to create this space between our brain registering something and reacting to it. The more mindful we become, the more capable we become of actually having conscious choice versus all those unconscious things occurring. And so when people come to me, whether it's about a marital relationship or whatever it is, and they're like, I just trigger and I'm, off and running, I'm just like, there's always something triggering you. So even in a panic attack, people don't know what that trigger might be, but their brain has been triggered by something.
Yep. I've noticed in the last couple of months when I go somewhere, and I'm going a little bit deeper here, but I think it aligns with what you're saying. I'll go somewhere, walk into an airport, whatever it is, and I'll see people, and right away my brain is connecting them to people from my past that look like them, very loosely resembling, but I just look up, oh, that's John from back in the day. Oh, that's Mary. Oh, And then I try to shut it off. Whoa, 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 that's not them. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense, but is that the brain trying to keep you safe with familiarity? Because that's what we want. We want to be safe, right?
Yeah, yeah. And our brain is constantly scanning for danger. It's it's what kept us safe over the centuries, right?
For sure.
Living out in Colorado, I'll often say to people, look, one of the easiest experiences to think about is you're out hiking and all of a sudden you jump back. And then you look again and you go, oh, it's a stick, not a snake.
Yep.
Right? So that kind of stuff is constantly happening in life and in every avenue. Any bad experience we've had, the amygdala has what's called, which is you can think of as the smoke detector of our brain. A lot of people have heard of that now, but it has what's called persistent dendritic modeling, which means it doesn't forget. And it's also the great generalizer. So if I get bitten by one dog, maybe all dogs become scary for me,
Sure.
right? And so, unless we're consciously learning to fight things as we grow up or living life and just being mindful of them, we are more controlled by our past experiences than actually controlling our lives.
It's like when somebody's afraid to get on a plane, it's not even about, typically, it's not even about the plane. It's about something else that goes back most likely to childhood, maybe an enclosed space, no control, all of those things. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, there can be everybody's story is different, right? And that's so when somebody's seeking healing and trying to figure out how do I move forward in a new way, they have to be able to understand their story because everyone's going to have unique triggers and unique situations, experiences. I did a postdoc in infant mental health, which was honestly pretty funny for me because I was a whitewater raft guide in college. I did not anticipate going on for all my graduate degrees. I liked to play. I still like to play.
Hmm.
But I did my postdoc thinking I wanted to go overseas and work with infants overseas. And I realized over the years, no, that actually helped me understand every person I sit with because that's where everything starts. In fact, as I talked about the amygdala just a minute ago, that is online at 8 months in the womb. So before we even enter the world, we are capable of starting to experience the world, and our body is already training us, our nervous system, stay safe, whatever, right? It's from day one, we are already wired for that.
I appreciate your insight, so I'm going to use it
Yeah.
and go and I'm going to pick your brain, and I mean that literally and figuratively. Is it true that most of what's piloting us as adults really came from our childhood? Call it, pre-birth to about 7-ish years old.
I, I think it's so here's what I'd say about that. We are always being guided by that. And one of the interesting things again about that is so the hippocampus, which is what we use for explicit memory to tell stories, isn't online as strongly until maybe 5 years old. That's kind of when it's, really going. And so even a lot of those experiences we're having earlier in life, we could never actually define, but they do drive us. And so we need to learn, like if we're having reactions that we just don't understand, it's possible that something is still going on from back then. But I would say that the reality is all of life impacts us. So it starts off with our childhood. If we, when we're young, are surrounded by kind of loving community where we're seen and we're safe and we're heard, we develop attachments that are secure. We believe we're lovable. We believe other people want to love us. Okay. And so all of this is going right. An infant, they don't have the cortex is undeveloped, right? So in the hand model of the brain, which Dan Siegel uses, you've got the spinal column, brainstem, subcortical areas. You fold the fingers over, that's the cortex. Okay. This is all developing in those early years of life. In fact, the middle prefrontal cortex isn't done developing until we're 24 years old. Okay. So all of those years are impacting us. but then life keeps impacting us too. So what I would say is probably the truest is that those early years of life are incredibly formative. If we are loved well and safe and secure in those early years of life, we're going to be more resilient, is a way
Mm.
to think about it. So all of life is going to keep impacting us, but we're going to really struggle with resiliency if we've never kind of had that kind of environment that helped our brains settle. In fact, when I did the postdoc years ago, there was this book called Ghosts in the Nursery that shows how kids who grow up in a domestically violent home, their brains are literally different. They're wired differently
Mm.
than kids who grow up in safe environments. And so it really, I think it's an issue of resiliency. Those early years, if we get what we need, we have potentially more resiliency, more ability to, I mean, life's going to knock us sideways all the time. The thing that's beautiful about neuroscience and the plasticity of our brain is that those years do not have to end up defining us. If
Mm.
we find as we go along in life, like let's say we didn't get in the first 7 years, but 7 to 14 we did, or we had a teacher who was wonderful who came into our lives or something, right? One person who helps us learn to regulate, and in neuroscience terms, that would be reflecting on the fact that they're helping our brain to integrate better. Um, Brain integration is what it's really all about. So again, to use Dan Siegel, I love Dan Siegel, Louis Cozolino. They write in this field of interpersonal neurobiology, which takes uh, the science of neuroscience and looks at how it can very practically apply to our lives. Okay, so uh, as we are growing and developing, our brain can be changing all along. So if we don't get what we need when we're younger, but we get it when we're older. Let's say you meet your partner in your 20s and your partner was abused growing up.
Mm.
Okay. If you begin to provide your partner with the kind of security, safety, being seen, being understood, that begins to rewire their brains. But it takes time. So the ways that we kind of trigger in life and just automatically respond, you can think about those as the superhighways in our brain. All right. When we're trying to create a new way of being, think of it as a jungle pathway. Think of your brain as having these roads in it. Okay. And you've got jungle pathways that are kind of just freshly formed things, maybe a new thought, like, oh, wow, maybe I can trust this person or whatever, right? But trust hasn't been a part of my story so far. So my superhighway is a struggle to trust.
Mm.
Okay. The more this avenue of being able to trust somebody gets activated, the more that has the potential to become a superhighway in my brain. And in terms of science, that's talking about a network being myelinated. Okay. When a network becomes myelinated, it becomes way faster than an unmyelinated network. But the ways that we trigger in the world and just kind of automatically respond, you can essentially think of those as myelinated networks. They're the superhighways. They're what our nervous system goes to, where our thoughts go, where we go when we get just triggered by life.
Well, with you're saying, it seems like, and I don't want to use a cliche, but it kind of crystallizes that situation when they say that people have potentially daddy issues or mommy issues. And it's, sophomoreically put, that's what it sounds like, where you didn't get what you needed. And every child is different. So maybe you didn't get the coddling that you needed as a child from your mom or dad. You could take another child and they're like, "Nah, I'm good, no problem." And it's just different. It could be the same parent, but they needed something more. So what happens later in life? Possibly looking for something or someone to fill that void. And there
Yeah,
that, there's a, well, why do we
yeah,
pick the wrong people in relationships? Because
yeah,
you're just trying to fill that.
right. And for most of it, most parents out there who have failed us somehow are not evil. They're just broken themselves. There are,
Oh my gosh.
you
Thank you for
know,
saying that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I'm going to say this in a very positive way. I believe we're all beautifully broken in some way. I feel we all need to heal from something. Oh, every single one of us.
Yeah,
Nobody's perfect. There is no perfect. We need to realize that. Otherwise,
absolutely.
nothing's going to move
No,
forward.
in fact, I have three older kids, 30s to 20s, and one of the things I have said their entire lives is, look, when you start to understand how I fucked it up, please talk with me about it.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be close, right? I know I haven't done this perfectly. And so I know I've messed things up. And when you start to recognize that, please bring it to me. And so my kids do, because I've held the door open from day one, you know, just going, I'm not going to do this perfectly, but I love you and I want to be close.
That's beautiful to admit that. And we all need to. If I knew now what I knew then, my youngest is 17, my oldest is 30. If I knew back when I was parenting, and I think it was, good parent, I would have done things differently. Even down to, even when you're hanging out with your, 10-year-old, or call it 7-year-old, and, we all have like goofy names and just like joking around. Well, maybe they take that personally. It's just that, my dad did it to me. So it was like
Yeah.
just for fun, we just goof around but
Yeah.
I would look at it through a different lens, maybe call it filter it a little. Um,
Yeah.
but then again, how do we parent?
Yeah.
The way we were parented and all.
Well, and that's where paying attention to our story and being mindful of it matters so much. So when I first went into counseling years ago, I sat down and I said, "Oh, I couldn't have asked for a better family." Well, let me tell you, as I started sharing stories, I'd share a story and someone would say, "Didn't that hurt?" And I was like, "Huh, I guess it did. No one's ever asked me that question before, right?"
Mm,
And so we're little geniuses as kids. We find ways to survive. So I used repression. Okay. The more kind of pain we're in when we're younger, the more primitive responses we end up
mm,
choosing to survive.
mm,
And again, we're little geniuses, so we find a way to survive, but then that's where the things that help us survive our childhoods can imprison us as adults. So when we become this age and we start to realize, wait a minute, there's some things that aren't working for me, it is part of trying to understand uh, that journey. And, you know, becoming a dad was honestly one of the most beautiful parts of my life. And partly because I started realizing I held my little girl in my hand, I was immediately in love. And I just thought, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever beheld. And I started realizing, so I grew up in a very conservative Christian environment, and it did not help me understand beauty.
mm.
So I think when you used the term beauty earlier, I think that's absolutely spot on. That is why I like life coaching, because as a psychologist, I had to start with pathology. I had to start opening the DSM-5 and diagnosing somebody or whatever, right? And I don't like starting there. I think the beauty is the beginning and the end of the story. And we all get miswired by life, but understanding that we can rewire ourselves is where all of the hope lies. And
Mm.
that's where mindfulness becomes such a powerful tool because, people will often say to me with mindfulness, it's like really something as simple as focusing on your breathing, like what's the point in practicing this, right? They
Yeah.
don't really believe in it, okay? But the power in focused attention exercises like breathing and that kind of thing, they activate our middle prefrontal cortex, which is where our focused attention is, executive functioning, all this kind of stuff. And the power of activating this part of the brain is it's the integrative part of the brain. It's right next to the brain stem, surrounds the subcortical, and is part of the cortex. So if let's say we grew up not really paying attention to our bodies, okay, that was my story. I had to work construction with my dad growing up while other kids were playing. I was helping him remodel. And if I was hungry, guess what? It didn't matter. I wasn't going to eat till the job was done or whatever, right? So I learned to not pay attention to my body. So over the years, I
Mm.
had to learn very simple things like I use the Muse headband. It helps me when I started using the Muse headband, I became very aware of my heart rate. Your heart rate tells you a lot. Your heart rate is part of the brainstem, right? The brainstem regulates heart rate, body temperature, all these things. And so when I'm making connections between my cortex and my brainstem, I am integrating my brain more. I am more capable of paying attention to what's happening. And that's the whole point of mindfulness is
Mm.
learning to pay attention to what's happening in my brain so that I can actually have some power over my body, over my choices, over recognizing, whoa, I'm totally triggering right now. Maybe I need to step away from my partner. Maybe my boss, I need to step away from whatever it is, right? That I need to get myself back to a place where, so what happens is when we get triggered, actually, Dan Siegel calls it flipping our lid. We start functioning out of the subcortical instead of the cortex. Okay. And it literally kicks chemicals into our cortex that shuts us down. And so that's why you flip this lid up because we're functioning out of here now, not out of here. So when we get really angry, really anxious, whatever, that's what's happening. And the point of mindfulness is helping us. It's kind of, think of it like, I've got this image from a childhood book of Gulliver's Travels where he's got these strings like on the cover holding him down to the ground, you know? I think of that when I think of this because what mindfulness does in integrating our brain is it makes those connections that makes it more and more possible that we don't flip our lid. We are more well integrated and we're able to have those different parts of our brain communicating and dialoguing with each other on very instantaneous levels instead of shutting down and not being able to think.
It's as if practicing mindfulness, it's as if you get to know you so much better. You
Yeah,
realize certain things, like you talk about, you love the outdoors. Same here. Back in June, I went away for like 4 days, Caribbean island, super dirt cheap on a Steve retreat. No
nice.
people, just kept finding me. Guess what? I just did it again, came back 2 days ago, and I even discovered about, deeper in me and what I need. Like it's just amazing. If you talked to me 3 years ago, five, whatever, I don't never go away by myself. I never do that. I'm like, oh, it's
Yeah,
amazing. And I would read, um, did some meditation, some Reiki, hypnotherapy, all of that.
yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Once you get to know you better, oh my gosh, it's like a new world. You're
yeah,
a new man. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely profound, and I'm sure you know it. You were there in Colorado, wonderful outdoors, right?
Yeah, in fact, I love practicing mindfulness as I walk. So what matters with mindfulness is finding a base that works for you. It doesn't have to be breathing. A lot of times people
Mm,
think only of breathing, but the reality is I've had clients who were traumatized and they were focusing on their breathing in the midst of the trauma. So guess what focusing on their breathing does,
my gosh, wow! I never even
right?
thought of that.
So you can't, so not
Mm,
everyone can focus on their breathing. I personally have discovered that I love the base of listening to sounds. So I will go for a walk nearby in this beautiful park we have just a few blocks away. I'll take my dogs and I listen to sounds.
mm,
And the thing about mindfulness is again, so think about it like this when we're strengthening this middle prefrontal cortex. It's like this. The whole point is not that I can focus all the time. It's I lose focus, I refocus. I lose focus, I refocus. So just like we'd, do an arm curl and that strengthens our bicep, that's what we're doing with mindfulness. I lose focus, I refocus. I lose focus, I
mm.
refocus.
But you
It's
refocus faster.
yeah. And I recognize more and more quickly what's happening in my brain.
Yep.
So therefore, as I live life, so a lot of times people can become discouraged too when they practice mindfulness because they'll just look at one session and they'll go, man, that was a lousy session. No, no, it's when I regularly practice it for years, my life slowly starts changing because I am starting to live a life where I am more attuned to everything about me.
Yep.
So,
I have to tell, we're out of time. I can keep going. Like, quite honestly, I'm gonna say I've done thousands of podcasts in the last number of years, and I've never met anyone like you where you have the psychological aspect nailed down and then the life coach part of you. Like amazing. And everything we're talking about, I wondered, like, where's this going to go? Talking to a psychologist who's a life coach, but the mindfulness, all of that, it's like the perfect storm in a good way. And you can do it virtually for anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
How do we find you? How do we find you, Phil?
Yeah, my website is just DR for doctor, Philip with one L, Bennett.com. So DRPHILIPBENNETT.com.
And do you have a free consult? Just if somebody wants to ask a question or how this all works?
Yeah, I'm happy to do like a 15-minute phone call or something with somebody. And I always say to people, look, I'm not for everybody. You need to find somebody that you make a connection with. So that's part of the reason I do the first 15 minutes free is just, hey, just get a sense for me. And if it seems like it'd be a good fit, then let's do a session. You can do one session, you can do 100 sessions, right? I mean, it's like, it's always up to them. So,
There's lots of life coaches out there and many wonderful ones, but blending your understanding of how the brain works is just it's just a beautiful thing. It really is because you get it and you help us get who we are. Phil, thank you so much for being here today. Learned a lot, validated a lot from me, and if the universe says so, we'll be getting together again sometime. Appreciate it.
yeah, we just might.
Thank you. All right,
Thanks,
we're coming
Steve.
right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.